August 16, 1977, the king of rock and roll was found lifeless on his bathroom floor at Graceland. The world mourned. But what happened next shocked everyone who thought they knew Elvis Presley. When his lawyers began sorting through his estate, they didn't just find gold records and sequined jumpsuits. They discovered cardboard boxes stuffed with canceled checks, secret contracts, and handwritten notes that revealed a man completely different from his public persona. Inside filing cabinets and hidden compartments throughout Graceland were thousands of documents that painted a picture of generosity so extreme it bordered on financial suicide, and secrets so guarded that even his closest friends had no idea of their extent. Behind the velvet ropes and stadium lights lived a man who couldn't say no. Elvis's lawyers discovered something extraordinary in the months following his death. Over 10,000 canceled checks written to complete strangers. The pattern was staggering and relentless. A mother in Memphis needed a wheelchair for her disabled son. Elvis bought her a van, too. A young couple admiring a Cadillac in a showroom caught his attention. He purchased it for them on the spot. When a woman at the dentist mentioned she couldn't afford her daughter's dental work, Elvis paid the entire bill plus gave her money for a year's worth of treatment. But the checks revealed something deeper. Elvis had been anonymously funding an entire dialysis wing at a Memphis hospital since 1964. He paid college tuition for dozens of children whose parents worked at Graceland or in his band. He sent monthly checks to elderly fans who'd written him letters about struggling with bills. The attorneys found a ledger in his personal safe. In Elvis's own handwriting were names, amounts, and simple notes. Rent for Mrs. Johnson, 3 months. Tommy's surgery. Fire victims on Jackson Street. The amounts were staggering. In today's money, Elvis had given away an estimated $8 million in anonymous, charitable donations that nobody knew about. His accountant had begged him to stop. The lawyer found desperate memos warning that Elvis was spending far beyond his means. But Elvis kept writing checks. He bought strangers' houses, cars, medical equipment, and groceries. His friends knew he was generous, but nobody knew the true scale until those boxes were opened. Inside a climate-controlled vault that even Priscilla didn't know existed, lawyers found Elvis's most prized possessions, not guitars or costumes, but law enforcement badges. Over 200 of them, each carefully preserved in individual cases with handwritten notes explaining where he got them and why they mattered. This wasn't just a quirky hobby. The documents revealed that Elvis had been obsessed with law enforcement since childhood, when he'd watched his father struggle with poverty and petty crime. He'd applied to be a police officer multiple times in his early 20s, but was rejected for being too famous and a distraction. So Elvis created an alternative reality. He cultivated relationships with police chiefs, sheriffs, FBI agents, and DEA officials across America. The crowning achievement was his authentic D badge, obtained after a bizarre meeting with President Richard Nixon in December 1970. The attorneys found Elvis's handwritten letter to Nixon, delivered to the White House gate, where he offered to work as an undercover agent to fight drug culture among young people. The irony was devastating. While publicly positioning himself as anti-drug, Elvis was privately consuming prescription medications at an alarming rate. His medical records, discovered alongside the badges, showed prescriptions for thousands of pills, uppers, downers, painkillers, and sedatives. Different doctors, different pharmacies, all carefully documented, but the badges weren't about hypocrisy. The psychologist's evaluation found in Elvis's files suggested something else. He desperately wanted to be seen as a protector, a helper, a man of authority who did good. The badges represented the hero he wished he could be, even as his own demons consumed him. The most shocking discovery came in a series of safety deposit boxes held under aliases. Inside were photographs, letters, and legal documents that revealed Elvis had been secretly supporting multiple women and children for decades. Not affairs in the traditional sense, but something more complex. Linda Thompson's letters were there, but so were dozens of others. Women who'd been girlfriends, backup singers, fans he'd met briefly, or daughters of friends. If they needed help, Elvis provided it. Child support payments for children that may or may not have been his. Mortgages paid off. Medical bills covered. Educational trusts established. One particularly detailed file concerned a woman named Elizabeth, who claimed Elvis was the father of her daughter, born in 1962. DNA testing wasn't available then, and Elvis never publicly acknowledged paternity. But his lawyers found monthly checks spanning 15 years, ending only at his death. The daughter's college fund, her mother's house payment, Christmas presents shipped annually. There were at least 7 similar situations. Some claims were likely fraudulent. Elvis's lawyers suspected he was being exploited, but Elvis paid anyway, apparently operating under the philosophy that if there was even a chance a child was his, or if a woman genuinely needed help, he couldn't refuse. His spiritual advisor's notes, found in the same vault, revealed Elvis's reasoning. My daddy was poor. These kids won't be. He'd grown up in a 2-room house in Tupelo, Mississippi, where poverty meant going hungry. He was determined that no child connected to him, legitimately or not, would ever experience that shame. The total financial commitment to these parallel families exceeded $2 million over the years. Perhaps the most poignant discovery was buried in boxes labeled personal, do not open. Inside were hundreds of pages of handwritten lyrics, musical arrangements, and a detailed business plan for what Elvis called the Gospel Project. Despite selling over 500 million records, Elvis had won his 3 Grammy Awards exclusively for gospel music. His lawyers found contracts, correspondence, and plans revealing that Elvis had been secretly working to abandon rock and roll entirely. He wanted to record a double gospel album, then tour exclusively in churches and religious venues. The documents showed serious commitment. He'd already contacted architects about converting Graceland's backyard into a massive recording studio, specifically for gospel music. He'd written to prominent black gospel choirs about collaborations. He'd even drafted a letter to his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, effectively firing him because Parker thought the gospel plan was financial suicide. Elvis had calculated everything. He knew he'd make less money. He knew his rock and roll fans might abandon him. But the notes revealed a man desperate for redemption and authenticity. I want to sing for God, not for screaming girls, one note read. This is what I was meant to do. His theology was surprisingly sophisticated. The lawyers found a personal library of over 500 religious books: Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, mysticism, and metaphysics. Elvis had been on a genuine spiritual quest, trying to reconcile his fame, his excess, and his faith. His saddest discovery was a completed track list for the gospel album, with recording dates scheduled to begin in September 1977. Elvis died 1 month before sessions were set to begin. The dream died with him. When the lawyers finally closed the last box and filed the last document, a different Elvis emerged. Not the caped crusader of Vegas, not the hip swiveling rebel of the 50s, but a deeply conflicted man trying to do good while battling his own destruction. His true legacy wasn't just the music. It was the thousands of lives quietly changed by anonymous generosity, the spiritual seeking hidden behind the spectacle, and the dreams of redemption that died unfulfilled. What secret about Elvis surprised you most? Share this story and let us know in the comments. The king may be gone, but his untold story lives on.